let's talk about the 10 Commandments. So we know that there were the Pharisees and the Sadducees who were the religious leaders at the time, and they absolutely hated Jesus because he challenged everything that they stand for, and he constantly called them hypocrites. In Matthew 22, verses 36 to 40, we learn how one of the Pharisees, who was actually a lawyer, went to Jesus with a question meant to trap him. And he asked him, "Rabbi, out of all the laws, which is the most important commandment?" To which Jesus replied, 1, love your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. And the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. I found this verse very interesting, and it made me go back to the 10 Commandments. So just a recap of the 10 Commandments. Yahweh is the Lord our God who rescued us from Israel. We shall have no other God besides him. You shall make no graven image and bow down to worship it. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Honor your mother and father so that your days may be long. I'm running out of fingers now, but you shall not commit adultery. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And you shall not covet your neighbor's home, house, wife, donkey. You shouldn't want to take anything that belongs to someone else and you clearly cannot have. See, now when you begin to actually look at the commandments and study them, you realize that 4 of the commandments specifically adhere to God and loving God, not having any gods besides him, not worshiping idols, not taking his name in vain, remembering the Sabbath and keeping it holy because that's the day of the Lord. While the other 6 focus on loving your neighbor, right? So we're talking about not coveting your neighbor's things, not stealing, not lying against your neighbor, not committing adultery, not murdering, honoring your mother and father. It makes sense. Because truth be told, if you loved God, you wouldn't do any of those things that offend God that he listed in the commandments. And if you truly loved your neighbor as yourself, you wouldn't lie against them. You wouldn't want the things that they have that you know you cannot attain. You wouldn't lie against them. You wouldn't dishonor them. You wouldn't kill them. And I think it's also important to note that Jesus said, even if you hate your brother, that's the same as committing murder. And even if you lust after a woman, that's the same as committing adultery. So y'all, it's deep. And I think it's so interesting because Jesus' teachings were so simple yet so profound. In you just simply loving God and loving your neighbor as yourself, you're fulfilling God's commandments by default. Isn't God amazing? Y'all better stop playing and start reading your Bibles because, the gems in here. Be blessed.